who got the best driver lineup in 2021. Hey guys, today I'll show you my ranking of the 2021 F1 driver lineup from worst to best. Little notice before we start. I ranked the driver lineups purely based on the on-track performance I believe they bring to the table, without considering things like team dynamics and sponsorships. Number 10. Haas. Let's start with the most inexperienced lineup of 2021. To rookie drivers in a barely developed car for 2021 doesn't sound pretty promising to start a season. Mick Schumacher, the son of 7-time world champion Michael Schumacher, comes into F1 with high expectations due to his impressive F2 campaign last year where he won the title. Mick, as shown in the past years, has the tendency to need a year into a new series to adapt to the team, as we have seen in his previous stints driving in junior categories. In 2017, he started in the European F3 Championship where he finished the season on P13 and won the title the following year. His stop at F2 painted a pretty similar picture, with a P12 finish in the driver's standing in his first year in 2019 and the title win in 2020. His teammate, on the other hand, finished P5 in last year's F2 season, in one of the most competitive field the Formula 2 Championship has seen in years, with young drivers like Alpine's Lundgaard, the Ferrari Juniors, Mick Schumacher, Robert Schwartzman, and Red Bull's Yuki Tsunoda, to name a few. Despite being labeled a pay driver, as well as being criticized for his too aggressive driving, Mazepin's F2 season was pretty solid, and I'm curious to see what he will show in F1 this year. Number 9. Alfa Romeo. Hold up, before you are going to dislike the video, because you love Kimi like all of us. Let me explain this. This was probably one of the hardest to rank, because the backmarkers are tough to rate due to the lack of highlights they can show in a slow car. I still think Kimi is an excellent driver, and could be a benefit to most of the teams on the grid. That being said, he just managed to win one race while being with Ferrari. From 2014 to 2018, his teammate at that time, Sebastian Vettel, who joined the team 1 year later, was able to get 13 race victories in that time span. Also, Seb was the one who was able to challenge Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes for the 2017 and 2018 Drivers' Championships. The Flying Finn is inconstant, quick driver but past his prime. Ferrari Junior Antonio Giovinazzi has shown that he can keep up with Raikkonen. They both ended the 2020 season with 4 points. The Italian managed to beat him with 8 to 9 in qualifying. But when it comes to race performances, Kimi still had the upper hand with 12 to 5. Giovinazzi is a solid midfield driver, but all of the teams that are ranked above Alfa have at least one star driver or a super talent on their hands. Number 8. Williams. If you followed Formula 1 at least for the last 2 seasons, you know why Williams is here. Mainly because of one guy. Mr. Saturday George Russell. The 23-year-old Brit is considered by many to be a future world champion, and was just beaten once in qualifying in his 2-year-long Formula 1 career. That was by Mercedes driver Valtteri Bottas on that one race he was driving the Mercedes, a car that he was too tall for and had less than 1 week to get used to. Russell should be a race winner by now, and I am full on the hype train for that kid. On the other side of the Williams garage is Nicholas Latifi. While labeled a pay driver and gotten beaten 16-0 in qualifying, he showed some good performances in the races, where he lost 6 to 10 to George Russell. Considering the level of Russell and his lack of experience in his rookie season, this was a solid performance in my opinion. Nevertheless, he needs to improve, especially his qualifying, to show that he can keep up with George. Number 7. AlphaTauri. The Red Bull sister team AlphaTauri got a new driver for this year in Yuki Tsunoda. The 20-year-old Japanese will start his rookie season next to race winner Pierre Gasly, who made an astonishing comeback after being sacked by Red Bull mid-season in 2019. The Frenchman managed to get a podium in that same year. He was sent back to at that time named Toro Rosso team. In 2020 he was able to improve and managed to win the race at Monza in a car that finished P7 in the Constructors. His consistency was probably one of the most impressive factors last season, and is rightfully seen as one of the most impressive drivers in 2020. While Pierre had his best season so far, his new teammate finished P3 in Formula 2 in his rookie season, which was the best rookie performance that year. In a very highly competitive field like mentioned before, that was enough to impress Red Bull and Dr. Marco to give him a shot at F1 for 2021. If Gasly can improve or at least hold his form, and Tsunoda being as good as many experts think, they really could be the surprise of the midfield this year. Number 6. Aston Martin. If it wasn't for Lance Stroll, Sorry mate, the newly named Aston Martin F1 team would be higher in this ranking. The young Canadian and son of team owner Lawrence Stroll is worth his own video. On his day, Lance is a super fast driver and one of the best starter on the grid. He manages to set some amazing highlights, like a front row start and a podium in his rookie season, or the pole in last year's Turkish Grand Prix under very difficult conditions. But his lack in qualifying and inconsistency often overshadow these moments. This year will be a career-defining year for Lance with the arrival of the four-time world champion Sebastian Vettel, who has a point to prove himself. There is no doubt about the talent Sebastian has as his 53 race wins and over 100 podium show. But those last years damaged his reputation massively. In 2018, he and Ferrari made some big mistakes that lost them the title. In 2019, a young kid named Charles Leclerc became his teammate and was as quick as him in only his second year in F1. All those things left their mark on him mentally, as we have seen in 2020. I do believe that Vettel will be back to speed this year with a new environment, the full support of the team, and a car that should suit him more than last year's Ferrari. Number 5. Alpine. I have to admit I'm an Alonso fanboy since '06, and the return of the two-time world champion got me really excited. Many people are questioning if Alonso will be as good as he was before he left F1 in 2018, and compare his comeback with the comeback of Michael in 2010 with Mercedes. But there are some key differences between those two comebacks. Alonso stayed sharp at his time off of Formula 1. In the time between 2019 until 2020, he started at various race disciplines like the Rally Dakar or Indy 500. Alonso looks as motivated and hungry as before, considering that the cars didn't change that much from 2018 to 2021 and his racing in other categories. I think we will see the Spaniard full prepared and up to speed from race 1. Will he be as good as he was in his prime? Time will tell, but I can't see him getting destroyed by his teammate and Mercedes junior driver Esteban Ocon. Esteban had a tough season in 2020 after being on the sidelines for 2019. He had a season of halves. In 2020, while being out-qualified and out-raced for the most time by Ricciardo, he managed to close the gap to the Australian and got out-qualified by less than a tenth more than once. The rising trend in form and his podium at the Sakir race got me really curious to see how he will perform this year. The trend in form from Ocon and the return of Alonso make me convinced enough that if the car is good enough to challenge for P3, this driver lineup is capable of delivering. Number 4. McLaren. McLaren could also be number 3, but it isn't due to one thing. Their new signing and lead driver for 2021, F1 superstar Daniel Ricciardo, has to get used to the team and car. The Honey Badger is one of the best drivers on the grid, and one of the best overtakers F1 has seen. But I expect him to need some time to get used to everything, especially this season, where we only got 3 days of testing, which equals 1.5 days per driver. His teammate and McLaren's golden boy Lando Norris showed his talent at his very first qualifying in 2019's Australian GP, where he managed to out-qualify the way more experienced Carlos Sainz. He improved in his second season and managed to get a podium. But what was even more impressive was his consistency. His qualifying pace and racecraft are amazing considering he only had 2 years in Formula 1. But do I think he is as good as Charles or Max at the moment? Not yet. That's why there is another team on my number 3. Number 3, Ferrari. After that shocking season that was 2020, I expect them to be way better in 2021. I don't believe they will be able to attack Red Bull or Mercedes, but I can see them fighting for P3 in the Constructors' Championship. As I said with Ricciardo, the new driver at Ferrari, Carlos Sainz, doesn't have much time to adapt to the new team and car. But Carlos showed in the past years that he is able to turn a season around and delivered consistent results and amazing performances like we've seen in those last 2 years at McLaren. The new number 1 at Ferrari, Charles Leclerc, proof that he is able to win races and a championship if he is provided with a car that is fast enough. Also, last season he was able to perform the most out of a car that wasn't near the top 2, with Leclerc, who will perform the most out of the car, and Sainz, who is quick, consistent, and has a superb racing craft. I wouldn't be surprised if they manage to secure P3 in the Constructors for Ferrari, even though I expect some crazy races and results to be the deciding factor for that. Number 2. Surprise. Mercedes. I know what you guys think. What is wrong with this dude? But hear me out. There is no doubt that the 7-time world champion Sir Lewis Hamilton is probably the most complete driver at the current grid. He has superb qualifying pace, He manages the tires like maybe very few on the grid are able to, while being as aggressive and fast in a race as someone can be. But a team has two drivers, and Mercedes' second driver Valtteri Bottas isn't near Lewis level. He is world-class over one lap, but his racecraft is his weak point. In his 4 seasons with Mercedes, he never was a real threat for Lewis, despite being in the same car. Yeah, I know he had to play the wingman in a few races, but at that time he wasn't a title contender anymore. While being Bottas' teammate, Lewis managed to secure 4 world titles and 42 victories compared to the 9 wins of Valtteri. Don't get me wrong, I still believe Valtteri is a good driver, and on his day he can beat anybody. But these days are pretty rare in a season. When your teammate is able to win around 10 races per season in these 4 years, and you only win 9 races in that time period while driving the fastest car on the grid. Sorry, but you are not on the same level as the top-tier drivers. Number 1. Red Bull. My number 1 for this season is quite a gamble. Great drivers like Albon and Gasly failed to deliver the results Christian Horner and Dr. Helmut Marko demanded from them. As we have seen, Gasly managed to make a comeback and was one of the outstanding drivers last season. The new driver next to Max Verstappen, Sergio Perez, has way more experience than his predecessors. His biggest strength, his racecraft, combined with experience and his motivation to drive for a top team the first time in his F1 career, makes me really believe that he will at least be able to keep up with Verstappen and support the team fighting the Mercedes. I'm sure that if the chance is there, Sergio is able to win a race or two, depending on how good Red Bull's challenger for this year turns out to be. But I can't see him struggle as much as Gasly or Albon did. Talking about Max is quickly done. When it comes to raw speed, he is the fastest man on the grid. His wet driving is phenomenal, and he is probably the only guy at the moment that could beat Lewis in the same machinery. I see Red Bull above Mercedes mainly because I think that Checo will be closer to Max than Valtteri will be to Lewis. So this was my driver lineup ranking for the upcoming season. If you made it until here, thank you very much. If you liked that video, make sure to subscribe, like, and leave a comment. See you in the next one.